This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the TEAM MARTEK Hour, Joe Martek.
See, the word that Dan was just using was integrity. And you know, and if there's one thing I can say about the two attorneys that are sitting here, one of the two has a lot of integrity. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Man.
That's not bad. That's 50%.
That's not bad. 50%.
What a way to start a show.
I know. That's what I thought.
Well, I feel sorry for Greg, don't you?
So
now, why did we assume that?
Why did we assume that was an easy one? Well, you gotta give Alan credit. He's a little quicker than you, Greg.
Yeah, I guess
you
so.
gotta give him that. Back in 2004, Greg Fasula, attorney, Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, and Joe Martek, financial advisor, got together and said, wait a minute, that isn't exactly how it happened. Dan and I met, and I said, Dan, what about doing a radio show? He goes, sure. And I said, okay, I'm going to go see Greg, so we have the three of us, because we have three different areas of expertise, and I think we can start these radio shows with the three of us, and it should be a really good thing. Mm-hmm. Dan says, sure. So I go see Greg, and I tell Greg about it, and Greg says, why? And I said, well, Greg, you have an area of expertise that I don't have, and Dan does. We can help people. Mm-hmm. He goes, do we have to? And I said, Greg, you don't have to, but you should do that. And he said, well, how long do you think we're going to have to do this? And I said, well, probably a couple months. Not long. 15 years later,
15 years
Greg.
later.
Well, that's a sign that it's actually working. You know, people call in, they get some of their questions answered. We pass on good news. We talk about politics. And, you know, I think we've done a good job of serving the public.
Yeah. I tell you, it's probably on a weekly basis when I meet a new prospect or suspect that the words wills and trust come up. Mm-hmm. And to this day, I had one in yesterday in the office, sophisticated, intelligent, educated, etc.
Yeah.
In your office?
Yeah, can you imagine that?
No. You found it.
They got lost.
Who were they looking for?
So it was called, We Have a Trust. And I said, well, why do you have a trust? He goes, we don't really know why we have a trust.
Yeah.
And you know, Greg?
I've seen quite a few people
like that.
And I would say the same thing. I have no idea.
Well, you know, and the strange thing was and we watched the seminars. Mm-hmm. And one of your competitors down the block, you know, has seminars constantly, mm-hmm. and nice things, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I will tell you, I started talking to them, and I said, okay, so you have this trust. Why do you have it? We don't know. Okay, well, let's talk about your assets. Well, mm-hmm. you know, obviously they had no assets that were subject to probate.
Yeah.
Nothing new, right?
So why have a trust?
Why have a trust?
That's why we do trust.
Yeah. And I said, well, if you ever buy a piece of rental property, that trust might come in handy.
Correct. Yeah, if you have rental property or you have property out of state,
right.
I mean, they can be a great thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of people out there with hardly no probatable property may not need a trust.
The key thing was, in fact, I had another lady that called from Okeechobee, and she had over 100 lots plus 3 or 4 houses, and she committed the mortal sin, as us Catholics used to call it. She had her kids' names on all of them.
Oh, ouch.
and 100 lots.
Yeah.
Wow.
But what was her thinking was to avoid problems upon her death. Their name's already there, not realizing it creates current problems.
Well, there's 2 major things that happen as a problem. One, if one of the kids gets sued, all those properties could be gone.
They're attachable.
That's number 2, taxes.
Yeah.
You die with a piece of property just in your name that you leave to your kids, the value steps up to the day of death. Otherwise, If it's investment property or something that is not properly done, it can revert back to when you bought it, and now the tax is due on the whole gain.
The whole game.
Right.
Well, that's awesome. I'd love to do that.
Yeah. Here's what I suspect,
Have
Joe.
to pay taxes.
Yeah.
I suspect that this lady had a neighbor who gave her that advice.
Yeah.
Yes.
In good conscience, said, hey, you should do this to protect yourself. And the neighbor didn't realize the tax consequences or the other things, and she did as many people do. They do what the neighbor says.
I had another couple that came in, back again, sophisticated, intelligent, educated, the whole thing. He's going to retire. And I said, well, I suggest strongly that you make an appointment with Social Security, and you go down there and find out what your benefits are. And there's a good, strong possibility your wife, instead of getting her own Social Security, she can get a spousal benefit and then delay her benefit till it's more than the spousal benefit.
Right.
And he goes, well, I don't want to do that. And I said, why not? He said, well, once I go in there, don't they start me? And I said, no. Where'd you hear that from? Neighbor, of course.
My neighbor.
Do they start what? When he dies?
As soon as you walk in the door, they're going to sign you up.
Oh.
That you're automatically committed. And I said,
No,
of course not.
no. But you know what happened is
You walk in another door, they do the committing.
That's it. Yeah, well, that's you stay in the white jacket and
That's
they
right.
tie your arms behind your back. Anyway,
I heard a statistic that only 40% of people that die with wills. 40%.
40. Can
Yeah.
you
Wait a minute. What?
40%
Well,
of people that died.
You mean
have
a will in their
will
hand?
or a trust?
Will or a
Because
trust.
we all know the state of Florida has a will ready to go to put their name on it.
Yeah.
So
Well, think about
Yeah.
high-level people. Joe Robbie, an attorney.
Prince?
I mean, what's her name?
Aretha
Franklin.
Yeah.
do you think that they think they've jinxed themselves when they do it?
Well, a lot of people, when you start
Yeah,
talking
I think
death, you
so.
think you're
Some
going to
people
die
do.
the next
Well,
day.
you hire good attorney/agents that should have taken care of all that.
Well, I've had a lot of people tell me, hey, it won't be my problem.
Exactly.
And then I say, yeah, but do you want the probate and the Fed and the state and anybody else who can get their hands on your money to get it?
And
I've actually had them say, I don't care.
And I had him say that too. Well, and then I say, worse than that is, does your family get along now? Oh, yeah, we're all pretty close. I said, I guarantee you, if you don't have this thing laid out in detail, there's going to be a divide.
Absolutely.
How many times I've had people call me from the hospital. Joe, Mike just died. Who's the beneficiaries? Talk about greed sneaks in on people. I mean, it's a situation that is so easy to handle ahead of time. And when I was talking to this couple, I said, well, it isn't just a trust. You also should have a power of attorney. Then you should also have a health care surrogate. You should also have a living will, and possibly a pour-over will that would state if you didn't do things correctly, you meant to, but you screwed up.
You weren't smart
Yeah,
enough to
absolutely.
figure it out.
Who?
Pour-over.
The pour-over will is...
That's
is a-
real?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a will that accompanies a trust that you need to have if you do have a trust, because what it does is you die and you left something out of the trust, you didn't transfer it to the trust, which happens all the time.
Yes, it does.
I do probates with people with trust quite often because they didn't fully fund the trust. The asset didn't go through the trust, so you use that will to have that asset go through the trust, pour through the trust. I don't know why it's not pour into or pour through, but
However the wording is.
pour over, whatever.
Yeah. The key thing that happens is, and the three of us right here, and Alan also. Alan's our guest attorney, who's become a guest member now forever and ever. He's retired. The reason I started picking on the two of them when they came in, because when you get two attorneys sitting side by side, we're going to talk politics in a minute because we don't want you guys to agree on anything. Anyway, Alan's a retired prosecuting attorney from Wisconsin, and been a valuable guest member. And I think the part that I like most about Alan is, okay, I forgot what that was. Never mind, Alan. Come on, Alan, stay awake. Don't fall
Well,
asleep.
you've always been on the other desk when there's prosecuting attorneys around.
That's right. The other side.
Let me just tell you, prosecuting attorneys are not my favorite people, especially when I'm being the one prosecuted, or persecuted might be another word. You kind of reminded me of my $30,000 dog. Anyway, Alan.
Well, I'm sure Greg will agree with this, that a job of a prosecuting attorney is not to find wrongdoing, it's to find enough evidence to go to court to see if a judge or jury will find wrongdoing.
I thought.
I think that's true. I think most prosecutors believe that, but
I like how he's smiling now. He's saying most.
But let me ask you this:
They don't practice.
The minute
it.
you get arrested, let's say you get arrested for doing X, isn't that wrongdoing? And now that's all he needs.
Well, the police officer is making an assessment on the scene that there's probable cause that a crime has been committed. But then the officer brings the person or people to me. They show me what evidence they've got. I question the perpetrator or alleged perpetrator, and if that person has an attorney, the attorney is there. And then I make a decision whether I feel that the officer has shown me enough to bring the case to court. If he doesn't or she doesn't have enough evidence, I have two options. One is to say to the police officer, I need this, this, and this, and then we can bring it to court, or you don't have sufficient evidence, I'm not charging.
I thought.
Or just hang him in the parking lot.
Hang him in the parking lot works. Vigilante.
That was the 1950 prosecutor.
Vigilante justice has always worked. It's swift, and sometimes they make a mistake, though. That's a minor thing, side effect.
yeah.
However, I thought that becoming a prosecuting attorney was for one major reason, only one that I can think of, and that was to get into political office.
No.
No, it could be to protect the innocent.
No. That's what this says on the stump and what it says on the door.
Well, it worked
A
for
lot of them do.
worked for the Garcetti family in Los
That's right.
Angeles.
I'm just gonna say
They lose O.J. Simpson, and guess what happens? The guy becomes mayor.
Today's the 25th anniversary.
I know.
Let me
I
tell
know.
you. Let me tell you the other side of the coin. I had the honor of working for E. Michael McCann, the district attorney of Milwaukee County, for almost 15 years, and he retired from that position in 2006 after 38 years
Wow.
of service.
Was he a rare?
He is the longest serving district attorney, not only in Wisconsin, but in the United States. And the reason he couldn't leave that position, he ran for Congress, he ran for judges.
Never got elected.
No, the people would not elect him to any other position, and when he re-ran for district attorney, he was virtually unopposed most of the time.
So he was that good.
Yeah.
He was
Well,
too
they
good.
liked what he did, and that's what they wanted him to do.
Wanted him to keep that job.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well,
That's
hey,
amazing.
Dan, we'll never meet that person.
No.
340.
Well, usually most people, even in the private sector, what's it called, like the Peter principle?
Yeah,
You keep
right.
getting bumped up to your level of incompetence where
Yep.
you can't do the job,
Yep.
and that's where they keep you.
You won't be bumped up anymore.
No, you're done.
You know what gets me? How many people that have never heard the Peter principle? I can't imagine anybody has it. All of us have heard it, right?
No.
See? Never heard that?
Peter principle?
The Peter principle is very, very graphic in big corporations, and that is people get promoted to their level of incompetence.
That's it.
Because what happens is there's no system in the corporate structure for demoting somebody, so you get promoted to a job you can't handle, and you stay there.
Yeah, because you did a great job doing this, so the assumption is we'll bump you up to the
Yeah.
next level, and you do a great job there, and then you try to get the next level, and you're not able to really
And this-
do that job, and they go,
See,
"Ooh."
the Jesuits taught Joe that.
Yeah, boy.
Who's
Yeah.
Peter?
Ooh.
He hung out with Paul and a couple of other guys. I don't
And
know.
Mary.
That Peter.
That Peter. I don't know where the word Peter principle came from, but that's what it is. People getting, and and we've all seen it actually, where somebody can excel in a job, let's say is in a position where they work physically, then all of a sudden they get put into management, and they are not a manager, and dislike the job intensely, but because of the paycheck, they really don't want to leave it.
Kind of like Congress.
Kind of like Congress.
Yeah, totally
Kind of like the
incompetent.
president.
Yeah.
Kind of like,
Well, they're all-
kind of like our last
If
president.
you're in D.C.,
Our
forget
current
about it.
president.
Kind of like our last president. Hey, speaking of politics, what I get a kick out of the Mexican thing, and here's something that is a positive for America, and the Dems are just ripping him apart. Oh, well, that was already settled a long time ago, but it was never implemented.
For the secret deal that Mexico doesn't even know about?
Of course.
If it's a secret deal, no one knows.
Not even Mexico.
The key thing was, no, wait a minute, the Dems first said that was agreed to 6 months ago.
It may have been, but it wasn't enacted
They started
It was
implementing
never
a lot of that.
enforced. See, they're hey,
Hey, that's like me
Come
telling my
on.
wife, yeah, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. And after 6 or 8 months of me telling her I'm going to get to that, she gets a little upset.
Well, that's like telling your kid to go mow the lawn and you forget to tell them when.
Let's look at the real reason why he came up with this so-called deal.
Here we go.
Because the Republicans were going to get all over him for these tariffs. And
Well,
he had to find a way out.
It might be a side effect.
That's
you
his
see,
job.
But
Let's-
here's where I was going, Greg.
Let's
The
be real.
end result is positive. The end result is
There's
positive.
no end result because that was already done.
No, it wasn't,
Yes, it
because
was agreed
the
upon.
6,000 troops had not been deployed to the southern
We should
border.
call that the
Oh, come
wimpy
on.
principle. I will pay you for Wednesday for a hamburger today. Well, that's what the Mexicans were saying. Yeah, we'll do that. We will do that. We'll do that.
And you are aware of the 6,000 troops.
And finally, Trump
We'll
said,
take-
I'm tired of that.
Yeah, and what Trump was saying is that the 6,000 troops are going to take a month and a half to be deployed
Right.
down to that border.
Right?
So we still will have a similar situation.
Yeah, and
for
what
the next month and
exactly
a half.
are they going to do?
Well, anything is
We
better
hope
than
that
nothing.
they turned them away. And
You know,
put-
Mexican has no immigration problem whatsoever because they don't allow any.
We don't want them
Yeah,
to keep calling
but
those
we have
Uber
a-
buses to bring those people closer to our border.
So what's going to happen?
Yeah,
Now they're going to
immigration
keep them in
laws.
Mexico under our expense and
We'll
rehabilitate.
pay for it.
Change
Well,
the
of course, we pay
immigration
for
laws.
everything. We always have paid for it.
Absolutely. They should
until,
change them.
until they change the laws. You have to go under the old laws,
Which is you can't
says
come in.
You come to the border, you say, I want asylum, then they have to be let in at least to prove their case.
Well, the problem with the old law is then they go through a court system real quick, and then they're let free,
Yeah.
And they never show
waiting
back
for
up.
a date to
A
come.
good percentage of them, like 90% do.
Yeah, they
get
don't
free.
show up.
They never show up.
Yeah, they do.
Oh.
They show up at jail.
Yeah.
This show would not be popular across the hall. I want
Three,
you to
four,
know that.
no kidding. 3-4, yeah, you're kidding me. Spanish radio? 340-1590, 340-1590. It's the Greg, Dan, and Joe show, part Allen.
Hey, he keeps us on the
Greg, let me
straight and
ask
level.
you a question. Why can't the parties get together and start working on things that they both agree on? And one example, infrastructure improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to happen.
You say they both agree on, but I don't think the Republicans do agree on that.
Well,
I
they-
know Trump is kind of for it, but he doesn't know how to pay for it, which we all know how to pay for
Because
it.
the government's broke.
How do you pay for it?
You borrow money from China.
Well, maybe you repeal this big tax cut that for the rich that was.
Let's
That's
just tax
implemented.
all the money that's sent to Mexico every day from all the people that work over here and send money back home. That's
see,
a way to pay for it.
What's going to be interesting when the tax? Here's something that I've never heard discussed. Dan, Alan, under the new tax code, you can only deduct a maximum of $10,000 worth of household expense. So if you have a mortgage, let's say it's a $1 million mortgage, and you're paying $50,000 a year in taxes and insurance and interest, you only get to deduct $10,000 now.
Yeah.
So what happened is, Greg, this new tax code taxes the rich like crazy.
No, they don't.
Yes, it does.
And do you know what the new estate tax?
10 million.
11 something.
Well, it's only right because
no, it's not right.
it was written by
you
attorneys.
Can pass, no.
How few people
can
in
pass
your
a-
practice actually have 10 to 11 million dollars in net assets?
None,
A
but-
tiny fraction.
So
If
so why pass such a law?
But it's such a
Because
small
those
amount of tax.
tiny
that it gets-
fractions
You could
have
take
a
here-
lot of.
I saw statistics. You could take every penny from every billionaire in America, every penny,
Mm-hmm.
our government would float for 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
The money's not coming from there. You know where the money comes from?
Mm-hmm.
Small business owners like me who pay taxes on my employees. Who
Sure
match
not-
it.
sure not
that's
coming-
Where,
it's not
that's
coming
where
from-
the real money to this country
not-
comes from.
not coming from
billionaires.
attorneys.
Comes from a small business owner.
Hey, we got a phone call. We got our faithful.
Really?
We got. Yeah, I know. Can
We
you
didn't
imagine?
scare 'em all off.
Actually, there's 2 people that listen to us, and one of them calls us. Mike, you're on the radio. It's Joe. How you doing, my man?
Good morning, doing well. First, I want to say how good it is to hear Dan back on the radio.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep. He didn't die, but you can't tell by looking
I
at him.
fought my way out. They had me in the bag.
Sound hale and hearty. Now, I'm calling about a different Joe this morning. I'm seeing a Joe Biden, and the man looks like he's not going to be with us more than 2 years. He has no business going up against the dynamo, our president. He has a ghastly, ghostly look about him, a real ashen color, and he's weak in the voice. Does anyone know, is he not well?
He doesn't dye his hair yellow, and he doesn't sit in tanning bed all day.
See, no, we got somebody over here. You
think
know what's going to happen?
Health-wise, I think Biden is much healthier.
Do you?
I think Trump could kick any golf swing now.
I am just going to be very interested when Biden. I'm all for Biden getting the nomination. By the way, I'm 100% in favor.
You think he'll get it?
I hope he does.
Do you not think that
I would
as
then
we
want to
go
see the
into
debate.
into these debates, do you not think they're going to cannibalize each other?
Of course they are. That's what they all do before they get the nomination.
I think
Well, and
Elizabeth Warren's going to be hard to beat. She's so smart and well-spoken, and I just don't see Joe having the strength to take it all the way. I don't see it. He seems very weak to me. I seen him on TV a couple days ago.
Is it weakness or is it demeanor? I mean, I've always seen Biden as a more
Laid
quiet
Yeah.
speaker.
Yeah.
But I do know this, that in the event that he got the nod and in the event that he got the presidency, he would actually be the oldest president we have ever elected at that time. So I understand your concerns. I mean, I don't know how invigorated a man is at that age. I know I feel pretty weak, and I'm way younger than he is.
You can't tell, though.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, we do want a president with vast amounts of energy and will and strength to get the job done and not get overwhelmed.
Well, there's 2 schools of thought, though. There's 2 schools of thought. Sometimes you can elect a president that does nothing.
But looks good.
But no, sometimes.
That'd be like Romney.
Sometimes nothing is better than something that's bad.
Yes, compare Cheney and Mr. Biden. Cheney got us in a lot of trouble. It has to be admitted, whereas Biden did not.
Cheney was tough with that shotgun.
Yeah. And the Mideast.
The key thing that happens is sometimes, and people I know go all the way back to Eisenhower, who, after he got elected president, he played a lot of golf. The major accomplishment was the interstate system, but the truth is the man really was not enjoying being president of the United States, according to what the history books have written. So sometimes doing nothing, you're not causing problems if you're doing nothing.
So you're saying doing nothing is better than doing something wrong?
Doing nothing is better than doing something wrong.
Absolutely. That reminds me of Congress for sure.
Amen.
Now, is Mr. Pence interested in being president? He seems like a great man to me.
I've never heard anything in reference to that, to be honest with you, Mike, so I don't know.
I've wondered.
One of the problems that Pence has, which I look as a positive personally, but it's a negative, he's an extremely strong born-again Christian. And it seems to me that the born-again Christians that are very vocal about it have had a problem with high office. Now, it isn't that I'm against the guy. I believe he's a good man, as good as they come. I believe he just would do a great job. But somehow or other, who was the other one? I'm having a Sarah's father. What's his?
Huckabee. Mike Huckabee.
Yeah, very brilliant guy, etc.
Yes.
Well, I mean, look at Carter. Carter is a very religious man.
Yeah.
I think he was a very good man, but I think he wasn't the right man for that particular time.
Oh, Jimmy?
Yes, Jimmy.
No, he's a great man, but he just it was a terrible president.
Wasn't right for
He
that time.
surrounded himself with not.
Another person who I thought was strong and he never seemed to catch on was Rick Santorum.
Yeah.
He's the same guy. What a great likable, real person he is.
Whatever he was missing, like you said, he just never hooked on. But, see, our producer from California is shaking his head. He doesn't like Rick. Why don't you like Rick?
Huh?
Huh? Why don't? Come on. Why? Why didn't you
Terrible.
Like
Watch out for Kamala Harris, Mike.
You think Camilla? He likes Pocahontas, though. I'm telling you.
Oh, she's a former Attorney General of California.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because if you hear her talk now, she's doing a 180 on almost everything she's prosecuted.
I didn't mean to put it in jail.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's moving to the left a little bit.
It's
moving.
amazing.
Well,
that's the way it is.
The long-range left plan is to make all of America be California. I'm sure of it now.
Yes.
Well, you know what happens is
we'll all be in debt.
no.
We'll all be broke.
You get a big raise so you can give it all back to the government.
That is.
You'll be living in a tent on the street.
Well,
But it'll be a nice tent.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Not air conditioned.
The sad thing, you mentioned the tents. 159,000 more homeless people since January in downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's
159. That's almost the size of Port St. Louis.
That's right.
Yeah.
All
Well,
down
right.
in downtown L.A.
Wow.
And when I tell
and why
people
is
about
that?
their plight, they don't even know what I'm talking about. So that's very limited as to who's
And
learning
that's not
about
the only
what's
part, Mike. I just saw some very interesting statistics on the Seattle area that have a huge homeless population.
Same thing.
The average amount of money, based on what they said, for what they spent for the number of people that are in that situation, averages almost $100,000 a person.
And that's
Now now they say it's housing because the housing is so expensive, but I'm telling you that there are most people who if they knew that the government was spending in that area approximately $100,000 a year per person, and they still live in squalor in a tent, that's an indication that there's some graft and there's some bad things.
I'm thinking
happening
about
with that
moving
money.
to Seattle, $100,000 a year
You
in
don't
a tent.
get the money. I said they spend.
No,
They spend. They got this thing and that thing, and you can go to that group and
How
you can go
much
to
of it you
this
think
thing.
goes that in graft or in politics?
Well, if I have
There's graft in politics?
If I have,
I'm shocked.
If I have a homeless counseling business and I'm hooked up, believe me, I'm getting a piece of
Haven't
everything.
you and I been trying to start a nonprofit so we can get $1 million a year salary?
We're getting closer. We're getting closer.
Hey, we got another phone caller
Okay.
here. Mike,
Thank you all.
Thank you. Hey, I think we have Ben. Ben, I hope our producer can push the right button. Ben, you're on the radio. It's Joe Martek.
Yes, sir, Joe. I'm a little disappointed. You started your session this morning with trust, and Attorney Fasula was about to tell us who needed a trust and who didn't need a trust.
We got sidetracked. We got sidetracked, didn't we?
We'll get back on track.
You did. You got sidetracked, and you're talking politics, which nobody can change except for the ballot box, and we can talk that to death, and nothing will happen.
Ben,
point.
Ben, thank
Anyway,
you.
Joe, my history is that I have a trust. I've had it since 1989. At that time, I was in business, and I did it on my attorney's suggestion. And now I'm retired. I had the only the big asset I have is my property, which is mortgage-free.
Mm-hmm.
Do I still need a trust?
So that's a good question. You did that trust back in '89.
89, yeah.
In Florida.
No, New Hampshire.
Oh, okay. So things change, and different states have different laws, and when I look at whether you need a trust or not, I'm concerned with what type of assets that you own and whether those assets would go directly to a beneficiary. A lot of investment accounts and IRAs and insurance, even bank accounts can go directly to a beneficiary.
No probate.
So you can avoid probate that way. When you say your home,
As far as my trust goes, we have 4 children. The oldest of whom is in charge of the whole thing when my wife and I pass on.
right?
And if she is not available, then the second daughter and so forth down the line.
Right. Well,
But I guess what I have just my home, which is mortgage free.
Mm-hmm.
I have we have some savings accounts which are modest, but and we're living basically on our Social Security.
Well, let me ask you this: Did you put your house in the trust?
The trust is the house is in the trust. Yes.
It is in the trust.
Yes.
So if it's in the trust and you have nothing else to go through probate, then you're fine.
Okay, now let's assume a hypothetical. What if I came to you and I did not have a trust, and the only asset I have is my savings accounts and our home? Would we need a trust? Would we need a trust in those circumstances?
Possibly not. I mean, your saving account, if you had a payable on death or transfer on death, that wouldn't have to go through probate. Your home, if you have that going down to your kids through a will or even through intestate statute, that could pass to them as homestead. So that technically is not a probatable process or probatable asset, but there is a process that you have to do to transfer that home. Whereas if it's in the trust, it's pretty much going to be automatic.
But Greg, doesn't he need a Florida trust rather than a New Hampshire trust? I know we had to get one,
Modified.
Florida,
It could be
Florida.
Yeah, and you definitely want to do a Florida will to back up that trust.
Yeah,
And
we've done that already. We visited a Florida attorney, and he took care of that.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've done what you need to do.
You have a power of attorney, am I right, also?
I do.
And the health care surrogate?
I do.
And the living will?
I do.
Good.
That's all a part of estate planning, and a lot of people overlook that, but it's very important.
Where you were asking when you walk in to see an attorney, do I need a trust or not need a trust? Greg, see, to get an attorney to give you a yes or no is almost impossible. They've got to say he's got a possibility.
He said probably. Possibly.
Yeah. So with his hypothetical,
he did not need it.
It's he may not need it, but they may just want it just for the simplification of it passing through a trust.
So let's just say you don't.
In that situation, it's kind of up to the client.
Since he already had it, there's no sense in changing it. Just maybe reviewing it.
Right.
Here comes the key. If you walked in the door and you don't have one, and you die with a will, and you're leaving your house to your kids, what's the process, Greg? How long does it take to transfer that asset?
The homestead?
Yeah.
Should be within a month.
Okay. How long does it take if you have a trust?
A trust is in if the property is in the trust, then it's in the trust, so it can be distributed.
So the kids can sell it
trust.
as fast as they want, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happens. So either way, what would happen is the kids could either buy the house or sell the house according to the will or the trust. It makes not really a bunch of difference.
Mm-hmm.
The key thing that happens, a lot of attorneys, and Greg, or Ben, we were talking about that earlier, they sell trusts like crazy and scare people thinking they had to have them. But the words that Greg said quickly, transfer on death. You have a checking account that should have a transfer on death agreement. So you and the wife get run over by a truck, transfer on death to the kids show up with a death certificate, they get the money. Savings account, same thing exactly.
Can that transfer on death go to the trust also? If I have a savings account that is just in my name, can I make the trust transfer on death?
Well, literally you could, but the key thing is this: you're adding a step that you don't really need to, because unless you have a different percentages, but you could have transfer on death on a savings account saying, hey, here's my 4 kids, each one gets 25%, and the bank doesn't charge you a nickel. You just walk into the bank and say, do I have TOD on my checking account, on my savings account? And if they say no, we'll say, well, let's do it. And they'll sit you down and just do it. Doesn't cost you.
Mm-hmm.
So the transfer on death,
the bank would do that?
Oh, yeah. Bank, like you have a brokerage account. I'm a stockbroker. So you can add.
I stay as far away from the stocks as I can possibly.
And that's okay, but I'm saying if you had a brokerage account, we add almost always a transfer on death agreement onto the brokerage account so that you don't have to go through probate. So
right, but if you have a trust, you just transfer that asset.
You could put it into the trust also.
The name of the trust, just like the bank account.
Same
you
thing.
could put that account in the trust, and then it would be funneled through the trust.
The key thing is sometimes the mechanics of going through step 1, 2, and 3 are more onerous than steps just 1 and 2. So anyway, what I love the idea of a transfer on death agreement, because the kids just show up with a death certificate at the bank and bam, they get the money.
Right. Well, the trust is the trust details what happens to our assets.
Right.
They're divided equally among the four.
Right.
Except for the savings account. That is in my name.
Mm-hmm.
We have another savings account in my wife's name.
Both of those could be put into the trust if you want.
Okay, that's my question. Yeah, could I have this transfer on death to the trust?
Or you just put the account into the trust. So you the bank would just basically they would close that account in your name and put it into the name of your trust. They would open it up in the name of your trust, and that way you continue. You're the trustee of your trust, so you would continue doing whatever needs to be done with that asset.
Right. Well, we have three savings accounts. One is in the trust name, one is in my name, and one is my wife's name.
Right.
Now, would it be prudent for us to take the balances of the two trusts in our names and transfer it, close it out, and then
to consolidate them? Trust? I mean, it would make things easier.
For simplicity.
Yeah. Sure. The key thing is, either put it in the trust and make you could just go to the bank, take the trust document, and they'll just change the name of your wife's account instead of it would say your wife's trust.
Transfer it all to the trust, and then everything's
all right.
consolidated.
All right, guys. Thank you very, very much. You cleared some stuff up for me. Thank you.
Okay, hey, Ben, thanks for calling and keeping us in line.
And the bank will do that for free?
Yeah, for sure.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
You know who told us about trusts?
Huh.
Our FCC lawyer.
There you go. Yeah. He said, don't trust. 340-1590, 340-1590. Well, that was good for Ben to keep us in line. Alan, quit talking politics.
That's right. It's all Alan's
fault. Well, I think that Greg ought to know that his dear friend Ocasio-Cortez has proposed that Congress should receive a pay raise, and I think Congress is doing such a fabulous job. I'm sure you agree with that.
No, they killed it.
Did they kill it?
Congress killed it 2 days ago.
Well, didn't the original framers pay only a per diem to the people who were there? And because the expectation was it wasn't to be a profession.
Right.
So maybe we should go back to that.
Yeah. The concept, it wasn't supposed to be a career. It was you're supposed to serve because you had the ability to serve.
I like Texas.
Texas?
They only meet, once every 2 years or something?
Really?
Yeah, that's crazy.
You got to make a living, so it's like this is getting in the way of my job.
Yeah, they're ranchers.
And Texas is thriving. Can you imagine that? Maybe politics is not hurting them because they don't show up.
Well, it's like a recession. If you choose not to participate, it doesn't affect you.
340-1590, 340-1590. Thank you, Ben, again. Mike, thanks for calling us up again. And luckily, we got two attorneys sitting here side by side that don't agree on anything, but occasionally they do. But, we'll see. But we have another phone call. Hey, Paul, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Good morning, Mr. Martek. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I have a question for you. I'm a recent transplant from New Jersey to Florida, full-time. Happy to be here.
Smart move.
Amen, boy. I'll tell you what.
I don't know why it took me 30 years to get here, but I'm just happy I am.
Yep.
Reason I'm calling, Mr. Martek, is my wife and I have legally executed wills, powers of attorney, and living wills in the state of Florida. Are they valid in New Jersey, or do I have to get them to be redone in the language of Florida?
Wait, you said you did them in the state of Florida? They're Florida will and Florida documents?
No. I did them in New Jersey.
Okay.
They're fully executed through my lawyer up in Jersey.
Okay.
But I was wondering if they're valid in the state of Florida.
So the easy answer to that is I wouldn't know without looking at them. The wills, generally, they're universal as far as having two witnesses. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be automatically accepted in Florida. I'd have to take a look at the will. Power of attorney is going to depend on the language in the power of attorney. So yeah, I would have to see them.
What happens is different states have like Florida's very, very difficult on a power of attorney. You have to detail every single thing that happens.
specify every duty that you want your
You
power
can't
of
have a
attorney to
blanket
have.
say, hey, you can
No.
do whatever you want routine, which some states
And
would
you
accept.
see some states. I've seen that,
Yeah, yeah.
especially I think up north, like
Yeah.
like New York. It's
So
a
if
general
Paul-
power of
If
attorney.
Paul wanted to call you to come in and look at it, you can do that for him?
Absolutely.
Hey, Paul, what's your phone number, Greg?
337-0062.
You've got a phone, huh?
And I have a phone.
Hey, attorneys with a phone. Can you imagine that? No Pony Express anymore.
And how about the living will?
Again, living wills are pretty universal as far as saying if I'm ever in a very, terminal condition and I'm on life support, and that's what I'm being kept alive with these artificial.
Like marriage, huh?
Kind of like marriage. and basically you're by signing that you've made the decision to withdraw life support. So probably that's going to be good, but I just want to take a look at that.
Doesn't that sound like marriage to you, Greg?
Absolutely not.
Dan's got to be careful. His wife runs his office.
Hey, she's a great wife.
And I'm glad my wife's not listening to this conversation.
No kidding.
You may be on life support.
It's like
Maybe on life support.
It's like who's going to pull a plug tomorrow?
Quite honestly, what I would do now, the difference oftentimes, and Greg has talked about this often, that the state of Florida and every state, each state has attorneys, and they like to do things different just to aggravate all of us. So, in order to know exactly that you're right, you have Greg review these things. And Greg, you're not expensive. You're not going to charge much to review.
No, may not charge anything.
So what you want to do is just have him look at them and say, yeah, they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that was 337
0062.
0062.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, very much. I appreciate it.
All right,
Thanks, Paul, for
You're
calling.
welcome.
Yep, life support.
Sometimes I feel a little bit like President Eisenhower. I know when to stay out of these psychedelic discussions that you have.
Just go play golf.
Did he say that?
No, he didn't. They didn't have that word back then.
There was no
psychotic, maybe.
Yeah, that's right, psychotic.
340-1590, 340-1590. Greg, stay with that thought for just a minute, because a Florida will is valid, we know, in Florida if it was done with, say, in the last 50 years or 40 years, because there were some changes made based on witnesses.
Well, the change was to make it automatically accepted. We have a separate clause. You have your signing clause where you sign, your witnesses sign. Well, then there's a separate signing clause, and basically it's an affidavit that everybody's signing that they were there together, including the person making the will, the two witnesses, and the notary notarizes everybody.
What if the witness dies?
That's okay.
If the notary notarizes everybody,
then it's okay if they die.
Then it's okay.
They can't die until it's notarized, though.
Okay.
They can even notarize a dead person.
Well,
only in New Jersey.
It's like
In Jersey, yes.
When you don't have
vote
that,
Democrat and vote often.
In Jersey and Illinois, you can
There
do
we
that.
go.
Paul liked that.
Paul likes that.
so it's a good point, though. If you don't have that self-proving affidavit and a witness dies, then and you can't find another witness, then could be
a problem.
Difficult. Yeah.
The key thing is it's anybody that's got a will or any document that was drafted not in the state of Florida. It's just a wise thing to review it, because all you're doing is opening up a can of worms for your kids that you might be able to cure really fast, just to have it reviewed.
Well, it always reminded me of the old STP commercial.
Yeah,
The guy comes up and he says, here's the little can STP, it's $2. You can pay me now, or when I rebuild your engine and it's $5,000, you can pay me later. You choose whatever you want to do. What's the same thing with a will?
You see, I prefer paying you $5,000 because I got too much money.
That's right. All right.
340-1590, 340-1590. Well, it's just an interesting thing, Greg, that the things that we take for granted and we talk about every week, invariably there's a person that walks in the door that just doesn't know that stuff. And That's why we're here on the radio. And that's why, Greg, we dragged you into this group 15 years ago, because we knew people would call 15 years later and ask that question.
Your one-day contract has been renewed.
Your one-day contract.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you know, everybody who calls, there's 20 people out there listening with the same thought in their mind. They just don't have the courage to call.
Listeners?
But my staff listens.
There you go. Hey, there's 20 right there.
But Paul brings up a great point. If you're out of state, if you're just moving into Florida, just have your documents checked.
Yeah.
Sometimes, a lot of times they'll be perfectly fine. A lot of times you need to redo them.
The power of attorney is the one that worries me the most, because
because Florida law is pretty tricky as far as what they want to see in that power of attorney.
And listen, invariably, it never happens to me. It always happens to somebody else. But there's nothing like being incapacitated in a hospital, and you're a widow or widower, and you don't have anybody to take care of stuff, and that power of attorney won't be accepted by the bank or whatever, because it's not a legal document in the state of Florida. So
it's an important document to have.
Yep.
A lot of people, they kind of try to wait for to the last minute to get one, but I wouldn't advise that, because a lot of times it is too late.
Well, the key thing is you also have to be competent, quote, in order to draft these documents and sign them. You don't have to be competent to draft them because you have an attorney do it, but you have to be competent to sign it.
Yeah.
And you know, Greg, you know, this just as a quick example, some years ago, I had a client of mine who was on dialysis and decided to get off of dialysis, and she was going to leave $1 million in a trust. And 2 weeks before she died, she decided to change it. And I said, well, this ought to be wonderful, because the people that thought they were going to get money weren't going to get as much. So what we did, literally, we went to the hospital with Greg and a videographer, professional, videotaped it in 2 separate occasions.
Good move.
And nobody prefaced her. She had to come up with the percentages for each person and delineate twice. This was all done within 1 week's time, but on 2 separate occasions. So then all of a sudden she did die. Not all of a sudden, she died. And I get a phone call from the nephew in Maine. I think I'm in that trust. And I said, yeah, you are. In fact, what I'm going to do is send you up a copy of the trust and the videos, and for the, you know, you can share it with the family. Well, that solved a monster amount of potential problems.
So how much videoing are you guys doing? That was a great idea.
Well,
in that situation, it's a really good thing. It's a good tool to have to just prove to the beneficiaries that this is what that person wanted.
Sure,
they had
and
the
they're
capacity,
competent.
And we're competent and not under duress.
Because that's always the issue. You know, once he sees the tape, you know, I'm sure he was fine with it.
I never heard a word back.
Right.
The key thing was, and it becomes a problem, because, you know, wills can be contested, and they are very often. Trusts can be contested. They're harder to contest a trust than a will, but the bottom line is it does happen constantly. In fact, there's one of my favorite.
A lot of times for good reason.
One of my favorite books is The Testament, written by Grisham. A guy's going to leave $11 billion, and he signs the will got 3 shrinks there that ask him questions to make sure he's competent. And as soon as he signs it, he jumps out the window and kills himself. Well, then they find out that he took all the kids out of the will. You could see what would gonna come after that. Well, those 3 shrinks didn't know what they're talking about. We need to get new shrinks.
Oh, sure.
But it comes a situation that the video.
Well, sometimes money can bring out the worst in people.
Yeah, and the beneficiaries just want to make sure they weren't cheated.
Sure.
And it's, you know.
And you know what? I don't blame them.
No, I don't.
For the last 30 years, I was under this impression, and then 2 weeks before she passes on, everything's changed. I'd want to have some answers.
Absolutely.
No kidding. Well, you know, the sad thing was for her, and forgive me about this, but, you know, if you're from Maine, you're called a maniac, you know, and they earned that name because they're very private people. And she was so private, didn't know her neighbors. She was a widow, had no children, so the money was going to go to shirt-tail relatives that she never talked to. Well, all of a sudden, one day I said, listen, you're living by yourself, you're 80-some years old, you need to talk to somebody every day, because you could drop dead or not die. You could die slowly because nobody's going to know. So she said, well, I don't know anybody. And I said, Okay, well, I'll call you every day then. She goes, okay, good. And I said, it's 6 a.m. And she goes, I'll find somebody.
That's right. That's what I would have told you.
So she did. She started to meet people, and all of a sudden she realized that these new people were important to her because they were a part of her life, and these people that were not a part of her life were blood relatives. So that was why she changed it. So, once
there's always reasons, and sometimes, you know, the beneficiaries want to kind of, if they're excluded or anything, they want to overcome those reasons. And
well, you know, you can be the worst father in the whole world, but if you die with lots of money, we love you.
Hey, I have
exactly.
I had a client who was a very wealthy physician, had, like you said, no family, no relatives, but he had 2 parrots. And believe me, they were well taken care of. Now, once upon the parrot's death, it all went to charities.
That's fine.
All right,
yeah, and I've had many clients that they say, well, I don't have much of anything.
Right.
My kids, they're all doing very well. I just want this going to charity, and that's why we need wills. That's why we do wills.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of people do charitable remainder trust.
Sure.
Right.
And, and literally that now gives them the right to get some income off of that, but then that money goes to the charity. Charity can count it as an asset, and there's a lot of things that can happen good with money.
If you know what they want to accomplish.
Exactly. 340-1590, 340-1590.
Kind of late to call, brother.
Okay, Chief, does 1 mean 1 minute? I'm pretty good with that finger. I was impressed.
By the way, thank you for getting a brand new life insurance policy before you leave on your trip. Naming us all is
the biggest problem is there has to be insurable interest. Tough. You don't have any insurable interest. Now, Greg and Dan do.
We do. We'd have to talk more.
We'd have to talk more, right?
Thanks, Dan.
Hey, and by the way, I'm not going to be here for the next 2 weeks. You're going to do this show again next week and the week after. Because I'll be in the Bahamas.
That's fine with me.
I'm going to Colorado.
I knew that. Greg goes west, I go east. Hey, listen, guys, thank you so much. Mike, Ben, Paul, thanks for calling in. And until 3 weeks from now, you'll hear this same show again next week and the week after. Adios.
You've been listening to the TEAM MARTEK Hour. The TEAM MARTEK Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the TEAM MARTEK Hour here on WPSL 1590.